we are back and we are talking supplements. Last segment, we were talking about Ithaca College and why this college essays and why this major essays. And today, or in this segment, excuse me, we're going to be talking about Notre Dame and joining me, and I'm happy to welcome to the show is my colleague, Kara Courtois, who's a former admissions officer at Barnard College and happens to be a Notre Dame alum. Hi, Kara.
Hi. Hi, Beth. Go
Uh,
Irish.
all right, so before we went on live, you mentioned that you would be willing to sing the fight song.
No.
However, because I am a kind person and this is
Yes.
October, I'm not going to make you
Yes.
do that. But
Thank you.
that would have been actually a really great way to prove that you were a Notre Dame alum. But that's
Yes.
fine. We're not going to make you
Yes.
sing the fight song.
Yes.
What I would love for you to do is, what do you like about Notre Dame? So
Mm.
I can imagine what drew you there, but when you were actually a
Mm.
student there, what'd you like about it?
Yeah. Well, I have to say what drew me there was my mom. I mean, she decided, upon birth, every one of us was going to give it a shot.
Oh, that's
So,
funny. Okay.
that was kind of that generation of
Hmm.
she grew up listening to Notre Dame football games on the radio, and women were not allowed to go when my
Mm.
mom went to college. So women were invited in 1972, the year I was born. So outing myself. So, and so that's why I went. I mean, truly. But I know it's fun because we're talking about supplement. I remember what I wrote, which is, geeky admissions person. But I remember specifically what drew me in was I did have an older brother who went there.
Hmm.
And I went to visit him at St. Ed's Hall, and we went to a mass in his dorm, which had never been to one that small. It's like 15 people.
Hmm.
All the guys were adorable, and I was 13 at the time. So it was like, hey, this is great.
Seems good.
Seems good, right? And everybody was wearing pajamas. And we were sitting on the floor, and they were passing around the host, and there's just one guy on a guitar, and we're just hanging out. And I was like, oh, I like this actually. Like, I can get into this because I wasn't sure about religion.
Hmm.
I had grown up in a Catholic family, but I wasn't so sure. And so, like I'd say a lot of people still today, parents do have a lot of say. It's quite expensive to go to
Indeed.
college. Uh, but my mom wanted me to be in a faith community,
Got it.
and that mass got me curious, I will say.
Interesting.
So that's what I wrote about.
I'm curious if when you got there, because and this does kind of tie into the other question I wanted to ask is, obviously Notre Dame is a Catholic institution, and your story of what drew you there was that
Right.
Catholicism and that piece of it. Did you find was it the same when you were there versus because obviously you went, it was 5 years later. Was it different? Did Catholicism was it as pervasive?
Mhm.
If you weren't Catholic, is it a
Mhm.
place where you would have been comfortable? I'm curious about your take on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I always like to share that most of my friends were not Catholic, actually.
Interesting. Okay.
And that was 25 years ago.
Hmm.
So I think it's probably, more so today on some level, but um, uh, that I thought was helpful, and significant. And yet we all actually went to mass. And part of that, I often say to students today, I'm like, there were very good cookies at the end of mass. I'm just not going to lie, and it was a totally social thing, completely.
Got it.
And it was all student led, it wasn't being shoved down your throat at
Hmm.
all. It was just, and to be honest, it was for, trying to de-stress half the time. And the piece that always resonated, and perhaps why I've struggled to find a church community since then in whatever faith,
Hmm.
is that they are speaking right to your age group,
Yeah.
bam, 17 to 21.
Hmm.
Everything that the priest says is entirely what you needed to hear, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of times we'd go at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, on our way home from the library, or at
Hmm.
5 o'clock on the way to the library, or, maybe earlier there was what they called the Pangborn Express, which was if you only had 20 minutes, you wanted to cram it in, you went to
Got
the
it.
fast one. So, but it was a very communal, social experience. And, what precipitated afterwards was a lot of discussion about faith,
Right.
organically, kind of everywhere, but especially in the dormitories. The second reason I chose Notre Dame for me in the end was I didn't want Greek life. And I
Mm-hmm.
really knew that because I'd been to a few campuses because I had 3 older brothers and
Mm-hmm.
had been, a variety of places with friends who were applying to schools that had big Greek life, and clear as day. And I had a
Right.
parent who wanted to send me with my friend to college to kind of keep an eye on her,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, it's just not me, and I knew that. And I feel fortunate for that, and not anti-Greek life, quite
Right.
honestly. I
Just not
love,
for you.
it's just not for me,
Right.
overall. And the dormitory, at Notre Dame, the residential halls are very much that community that helps you find a place, which is what Greek life is supposed to do also.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Really quickly before we dive into the supplements, because there are a bunch, your friends who were not Catholic, which you said the majority were
Mhm.
not,
Yeah.
nobody converted, right? So they weren't trying to convert anyone to Catholicism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my friends ended up marrying someone who is Catholic and
Mm-hmm.
has always attended Catholic church then, but she's still Episcopal,
Mm-hmm.
overall. And at the time, I don't think I had any Jewish friends, but I do know some Jewish people who went there.
Got it.
That certainly was a little bit more of an anomaly, but I think Notre Dame would love it. Just faith exploration. That's really what they're hoping for.
I like it. And
Yeah.
I mean, again, we talk about this because not every school is right for every person, and
Yes.
but it's
Yeah.
important to understand kind of what you're getting yourself into. And that
Yes.
leads me right to the very first prompt, which is required of all students. And notably, this is what it is. Notre Dame is a Catholic university founded by members of the Congregation of Holy Cross with a mission to educate the hearts and minds of students. What excites you about attending Notre Dame? Um, and I would love your advice here, just for our listeners who listened to the previous segment. This is a why this college essay. So go
Absolutely.
for it.
Yeah, and like I'm sure has been said many times before on a why this, skip the obvious.
Mhm.
Assume, as I say to every Duke applicant, assume they know you want to be a Cameron crazy, and that
Yes.
you want, and even though Coach K isn't there anymore, that you want that. Just assume all of that, that you want the beauty of the campus and you want, the rah-rah and touchdown Jesus watching over you at a football game and all that. But go deeper. And I always say, start with what you have already done in high
Hmm.
school that, demonstrates to you what you're looking for, because that makes sense. Start with what you know. And then,
Hmm.
um, so I think narrowing the focus to maybe one or two aspects always is a better, deeper, richer response to,
Hmm.
and tying it to, real reflection. So I always say, let the activities section do their job. Very simple. Let the supplements do their job. Reflective, you know.
Hmm. Exactly. And making that connection. And I think that's really great advice. And I particularly love the idea for a 200-word why this college essay that you are better off identifying one or two things and
Yeah,
digging really deeply into that than trying to
yeah,
cram 20 things into,
totally. And sound like
right?
a checklist. Like, ooh,
Yes.
you can do research on the website. Like that doesn't show depth and breadth and sort of highly selective, when they're really trying to advocate for you.
Hmm.
Help your readers out. Help them when they go into committee to have a couple nuggets to say, oh, it was very thoughtful, that this student feels connected and that makes sense in the context of their application. So
Right.
yeah,
Although, to be fair, students do need to start with doing some research on the website. But to your
totally.
point, right, it's
Totally.
not like you found 20 things and you're going to cram all 20 into a 200
Yeah.
word essay. It's that
Yeah.
you identified, right, like two things that you want to talk about
Yep.
and you
Yeah.
can really dig into it.
Yeah.
So,
And the final thing I'll say on that is that I find students say they feel like guilty when they don't know the details about the psychology major or the engineering. And I was like, no one expects you to know that.
right.
That's where your research comes in. But then that's where I always say, I'm like, that's actually why they make you write these supplements, is not just to torture you, is actually because that's where you fall in love. That's where you find your connection and you start knowing the nuances
Right.
of what Michigan engineering is versus Notre Dame engineering, and sort of that, you know, all the kind of really cool programs that exist within these programs. So it's really exciting.
Well, and ideally, it might even help you rule something out if upon,
100%.
right, a
I've seen
deeper
it.
dive, yeah,
I've
you
seen it.
realize, oh,
Yep.
I didn't know that that was their focus. That's not for me.
That's
And I have to
exactly
laugh
right.
at your choice of words as a Catholic that they feel guilty about that is
It's
kind of
couldn't
hilarious.
couldn't be more accurate.
Couldn't be more accurate, but I digress. All right. So that's one required. Everybody's got to write the one we just talked about.
Mhm.
Now, for those of you who are applying to Notre Dame now, you should rejoice because in the past, you had to write way more than you do now.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
they ask you to write one additional essay, also 200 words maximum, but they allow you to choose and you have four options. So we'll just go through one by one. Probably we should step up the pace a little bit so we
Yes.
can get through them
So
all. All right, option A. People in the Notre Dame community come from many different places, backgrounds, and walks of life. How is where you are from a part of who you are? What's your advice?
narrow. Yeah, don't give us the helicopter overview of, where you started in kindergarten and, to now, but just get narrow,
Hmm.
and really just very specific, and hopefully try it a couple times. Don't try it just the first draft. I know
Yes,
that's
please.
such parent advice, but like,
It's
yeah,
good advice.
it's not your first draft.
Right.
It's definitely two or three tries in, and cutting and editing to get to the tightest, response.
And the only thing I would add is that community can be many, many, many different things.
Yes.
I find that students hear community and they automatically go to their town.
Yes.
But community could be that tight knit group of friends you've had since you were a kid. It
Yeah.
could be a club that is hugely important in your life, right?
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
So expand your vision of what a community is, I think would be my
Definitely.
other
Great point.
piece of advice. All right. Option B, tell us about a time when you advocated for something you believe in.
Hmm. I The key point that I always try to make is there's no right or wrong here,
Yes.
and just get real. Just break it down to, and it's might be something you've advocated with your parents. It might be something in the classroom and with a peer, but just be genuine. I mean, the guys over all of this is hopefully just be genuine. There is
Yeah.
no right or wrong, and try to steer away from wondering what the admissions counselor is going to think. That's always our best tip.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And I also think the core of this is what is something you believe in, right? Start there.
Yeah.
And to your point about nothing being right or wrong, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. And it doesn't
Yes.
have to be, it could be small. It just has to be something that is true and authentic to you and that you
Yeah.
have actually advocated for in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form,
And if you
right?
catch yourself wondering, what are they going to think about this? Or, ooh, that sounds nice, then your instincts probably are trying too hard,
Yes.
not being genuine.
Right. You got to start with yourself first, right? It's a
Mhm.
personal essay. And then write rather than what do they want here? That, it's such a common question for students to ask. And I have
Yeah.
students who do it all the time. What are they looking for here?
Yeah.
They're look at the question. They're looking for you to
Yeah.
answer that. There isn't an ulterior motive. They really want you
Yes,
to answer that
exactly.
question that they've asked.
Exactly.
All right, option C. If you were given unlimited resources to help solve one problem in your community,
Mhm.
what would it be and how would you accomplish it? So, thoughts on
Don't
this
forget
one?
the second part of that question.
Yes.
That's my number one tip.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and steer away from the Miss America, contest here of, not that anybody's watching it probably, but just that, like, ooh, like what is in the news is probably what a lot of people are going to respond to, but get granular,
Right.
and really boots on the ground. What have you been connected to? Um, and it could be something teeny tiny, like you said, that is a local connection, perhaps, but
I-
connect to what you know.
yeah, and I mean, world peace is a wonderful concept, but
Yeah.
no.
It's
Just
hard
no.
stop.
Which I
Yeah.
think is what you were after with like the Miss
Yeah.
America or Miss Universe question, right?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
not where you want to go. All right, we have a minute for the last one. Option D. What is the greatest compliment you have ever been given?
Mm,
Why was it meaningful to you?
mm, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think for some students, that's just not going to be the question they should choose,
Right.
overall. But like any school that you have options, go through, and it's like taking a multiple choice test. Cross out the one that doesn't fit. But if you're stuck, I'm sure you've been given a compliment, at some point. And I wouldn't rule it out right away. It's not my favorite question. I'm showing my bias there, but
Hmm.
that is probably for some students the best question, because you could go pretty simple with it, and simple is genuine, and that's probably going to yield some pretty positive talking points.
Yeah. Actually, what's interesting is that as we got to this question, because I had something in my head
Yeah.
that I thought, oh, that would have been perfect to write about were I
Yeah.
applying to Notre Dame and they
Yeah.
asked this question.
Yep.
I was immediately drawn to that one. So I
Yeah.
think your advice is really good. If you're sort of like, I have no idea, then by all means don't. But
Right.
again, what are they looking for? They're being straightforward. So
Yeah.
why was that compliment so meaningful to you is
Yeah.
probably where you want to start. Kara, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Beth.
Absolutely. All right. And next time you can sing the Notre Dame fighting
I
song.
will warm up. Yes.
All right. Sounds good. Next week, Ian is back hosting. We're going to be talking about more supplements, Pitzer specifically. We're also talking about NESCAC schools and the benefits of having an emergency fund. So you're not going to want to miss that. Don't forget, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And we are here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific.